and a boldness, the Word of God in our churches, it leads men to purity. It's part of the gift of being a part of the great church of Jesus Christ.
But he says the first line of defense is in the home. Parents refusing pornography and teaching their children about it with the Bible in hand. Here also calls on civic leaders and lawmakers to get involved. I'm Charlie Butts.
U.S. officials say Israel and the United Arab Emirates will sign their historic deal normalizing relations at a White House ceremony on September 15th. The officials said senior delegations from both countries will likely be led by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Emirati Foreign Minister Mohammed bin Zayed. Finally, tech stocks led another rout on Wall Street Tuesday after President Trump threatened to, quote, decouple the U.S. and Chinese economy. The Dow lost 632 points. The Nasdaq dropped more than 4%, down 465 points, and the S&P 500 took 95 points off the table. For American Family News, I'm Steve Jordan.
Have you been looking for a way to serve others? Are you able to serve in a ministry without being paid? You and Friendships might be the perfect match. Friendships is currently taking applications for volunteers providing aid to disaster victims, refugees, and the impoverished, both here at home and around the world. Get more information at friendships.org or by calling 337-433-5022.
Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
And good Tuesday evening to you. Fred Jackson sitting in for Brother Abe tonight. I almost said Monday. Your days get mixed up on these long weekends, but it is a Tuesday evening. Good to be with you. 56 days to Election Day. It's coming up on us, folks, and 21 days to the first debate. So going to be a busy month, busy fall, and we are here to inform and keep you informed as we roll up to that election day. It is hard to believe, 8 weeks from today, be election day. Now, we're not sure come this election night whether we'll know the results. There is a lot of pessimism based on what certainly the Democrats have been saying, that if Donald Trump wins, regardless of how much he wins by, well, you heard Hillary Clinton last week say it doesn't matter how much Donald Trump may win by, it's going to be contested because they're already telling the American people that the election results, if Joe Biden loses, of course, if he wins, then it's been a perfect election in their eyes. So it's going to be an interesting time. Want to start off the show tonight, though, with a question for you. How would you like to be a police officer right now in the United States of America? Wow. We need to be praying for these men and women who take one of the toughest jobs in America. And today, more and more, they are not appreciated. Don't know if you heard the one of the lead stories in the newscast just a few minutes ago. The entire police leadership in Rochester, New York, quit today. Rochester, New York, third largest city in the state of New York. The entire leadership team of that police force quit today. They include Police Chief LaRon Singletary. He's an African-American man. Been with the Rochester force basically his whole career. Also stepping down, Deputy Chief Joseph M. Morabito, and the mayor of that city, Lovely Warren, told City Council other members likely stepping down as well. Indeed, they are. Now, what is this all about? This is about the death of Daniel Prude. Now, you probably have seen the still pictures, maybe a video. He's a man with a bag over his head, didn't have any clothes on. Now, what the police force is being accused of is a suffocation death. They were following procedures. This man had mental problems. They put this bag overhead. I think they call it a spit bag. They're following procedures. Unfortunately, the man suffocates. But right away, there are protests. There are politicians who say, yeah, our police force must have done something wrong. So this is what's happened. Singletary, here's a quote from him in his resignation today. The events over the past week are an attempt to destroy my character and integrity. The members of the Rochester Police Department and the greater Rochester community know my reputation and know what I stand for. The mischaracterization and the politicization of the actions that I took after being informed of Mr. Pruitt's death is not based on facts and is not what I stand for. Is this starting to become a familiar story, folks, for police forces across this country, being Seattle, Portland, Oregon, New York, Cleveland? I could go on and on. But here's the leader of the protests there in Rochester, New York. Amin Abid, speaking for the Free the People ROC, calls it great news today that this police force leadership has quit. They've been holding nightly protests. It says, this is a quote from him, it says to the people that people are able to move things and to shape things. The police chief wouldn't retire if it weren't for something that he felt he was accountable to. But, she said, nightly protests will continue. Now, this is important, folks, because this speaks to the real agenda. The protests don't stop when the police leadership quits. Listen to what she says. She says it'll include the resignation of the mayor, defunding and demilitarizing of police, and development of a state law barring police departments from responding to any mental health crisis. Now, when you talk about that, that could be an abuse of a spouse by someone. So police aren't to respond to that. But there's the agenda. The police leadership quits today, but that's not enough for these protesters. They want more. And that story is being repeated over and over and over again. If you think that's just an isolated incident for a moment, Dateline Dallas this afternoon. Dallas Police Chief Renee Hall quits. African-American woman. Announced her resignation today. Takes effect December 10th. According to this story from a local TV station there in Dallas, the chief's resignation comes weeks after she came under fire for her handling of protests in Dallas after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. On one night of demonstrations, protesters were boxed in on Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge. Hall said more than 600 people would be arrested and charged with a misdemeanor for blocking a road. She later said the police department wouldn't file charges against the protesters. Dallas City Council members critiqued, here we go again, politicians, Hall's leadership during the 4-day period of large protests in the city. When the council discussed the final report, they asked her to grade herself. Hall gave herself a C- for handling the situation. After all of this review, it was clear to me we had a failure of leadership. Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Adam McGow said during the August committee meeting. So there you have it, Renee Hall, African-American leader. And of course, just a few weeks ago, Carmen Best, also African-American leader, police chief in Seattle, quit. What happened there? She stepped down after the Seattle City Council voted to cut her salary and that of her command staff while trimming the department's budget by close to $4 million and reducing the force by as many as 100 officers. Like I say, this goes on and on and on. Police officers in New York City quitting. Like I say, I started off this segment by saying, how would you like to be a police officer in this country tonight? If this keeps going, folks, you're going to have more and more resignations. You're going to have more and more people who say, you know, I was interested in law enforcement, not anymore. Don't want to be part of that. If you don't have the support, even though you're trying your best. And remember now, in these situations, this all has to do with police departments confronted with violent protesters. And they're simply trying to do their job to protect innocent citizens, businesses. And yet when the pressure comes from these protesters, from other politicians, from the mainstream media, the local politicians, the city council members, the mayor step back and say, yeah, we think our police officers did the wrong thing. Not to mention some of the local prosecutors, some of which got into office thanks to the support of George Soros. Some of these prosecutors right away, they want to condemn the local police departments. Serious stuff, folks. Not to be outdone, the NFL, which opens its season Thursday night. Some interesting facts coming out from the leadership of the NFL today. When you go to watch it on TV, NFL end zones will be inscribed this season with two slogans. It takes all of us on one side and end racism on the other. The NFL will also allow similar visuals on helmets and caps. Players will be permitted to wear decals on the back of helmets or patches on team caps, displaying names or phrases to honor victims of racism and or police brutality, end quote from the Associated Press. Gee, I have to wonder if any players will be allowed to put the name of police officers who have been killed. According to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, the NFL stands with the black community, the players, clubs, and fans. Confronting recent racism with tangible and productive steps is absolutely essential. We will not relent in our work. NBA players got owners to agree to establish a social justice coalition as a condition of their return to play, made up of players, coaches, and owners, that would focus on issues such as voting access and advocating for meaningful police and criminal justice reform. That's the NBA. Jay Thomas, sports and entertainment attorney and founder of Diverse Representations, squashed the argument by some of Colin Kaepernick's critics that protests distract from the real issues. That's what this person said. I think protests by players are an excellent way to bring awareness to various issues ranging from criminal justice reform to police brutality to the racism and inequality still plaguing this country, Thomas said. I'm 100% behind players who continue to kneel and protest. These players talking about police brutality, inequality still plaguing this country, this coming from players who make multi-millions of dollars in this country for playing basketball or football, and they're talking about inequality. You know, I was thinking about this today. Where are the protests from these multi-millionaire players every weekend when we hear the death toll in Chicago? When young black men kill other young black men and kids. Did you hear in this weekend in Chicago, a little 8-year-old was gunned down? 8-year-old was in a vehicle with some other people. The vehicle was open fired from another vehicle. 8-year-old killed. Number of kids being killed. Where? In minority communities in these New York, Chicago, Detroit. Where are these multi-million dollar players then? We don't hear a peep. Not a peep. And yet now they're getting all self-righteous about these things. I wonder what's going to happen to the viewership an NFL opener on Thursday night. I don't know. These sports teams, NHL, they delayed a game in their playoff series there last week. What's this idea about politicization all of a sudden? Where's the support for the police officers who are there to protect us? This is just another phase, folks, of what the agenda is, the anarchy, the attempted anarchy in this country. And I tell you what, this is what's on the political agenda. The law and order thrust from President Donald Trump has been listed, I think, as number 3 in priorities for the American people. And you may know that now these protests are moving out into the suburbs. Have you seen some of the pictures of people sitting outside? The restaurants aren't allowed to have people inside. People outside eating on the cafe on the sidewalk, they're being attacked. The American people are very concerned, and they're looking for leadership, political leadership, that's going to protect them and turn this around and support police officers again. It's a growing agenda. All right, you're listening to the Hamilton Corner. Fred Jackson sitting in for Abe tonight. Wanted to get into the issue of the police officers and the lack of support that's being shown. We need to pray for them, folks, and pray that leadership would have some backbone and support police officers in these cases. All right, much more ahead. Right after the break, you're listening to the Tuesday edition of the Hamilton Corner. Back after the break.
And now, your 2-minute health and prayers update from the Presidential Prayer Team, a ministry of the Pray First Radio Network.
It's hard to believe that we've been at this now for 6 months. We've all learned a lot in that period of time, this virus. Ohioans from the beginning have stepped up. And although we have had great tragedy, number of Ohioans dying, number of Ohioans getting very sick, number of Ohioans who have lost their jobs, the fact still remains that Ohioans have done pretty well throughout this in the sense of stepping up and doing what it took so that we did not get in a situation like some other states. And frankly, that's a tribute to what each and every one of you has done during that period of time.
Hello, this is Jim Bolthouse, president of the Pray First Radio Network. During these times of uncertainty, we're here for you with current information about the COVID-19 virus, as well as important prayer points to guide you in prayer at a time when our country needs it most. 1 Peter 5:7 reminds us that God wants to shoulder burdens during difficult times.
Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you.
We'd like to invite you right now to join us in prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank You for this day and all the blessings that come with it. Keep us strong and help us to be brave, even when the path before us is unclear. Give us the wisdom and guidance we need each and every day, and help us to see the hope that You provide. Let us find shelter in Your love and peace in Your protection. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. To access free prayer resources that guide you in prayer and to see updates about the COVID-19 virus, go to pausetopray.org.
Brian Fisher here with today's Life and Liberty Minute. President Trump has been mocked for saying that mail-in voting leads to voter fraud and chaos, but every day he has proved right. Detroit has a mail-in catastrophe on its hands. First, they cannot legally even start counting votes in 72% of precincts because the poll books and the number of votes cast don't match. Now comes eyewitness evidence that up to 20,000 votes were counted without being verified because workers were running so far behind. Trump's margin of victory in 2016 in Michigan was just 10,704 votes, meaning in a close election, this kind of chaos and likely fraud could put someone in office whom the people did not choose. Time to go back to in-person voting with voter ID to keep a Travis Schumachery like this from ever happening again.
Catch Brian Fisher on Focal Point, weekday afternoons at 105 Central on American Family Radio.
Shining light into the darkness, this is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
And welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Fred Jackson sitting in for Brother Abe today. Well, the political environment that we're in is spreading. We've talked about police departments. We've talked about professional sports. And now in the workplace. And joining us in studio right now is Chris Woodward, one of the fine reporters from American Family Radio News. Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
You've been working on a couple of stories over the last several days involving this. One story that caught our eye late last week involved a gentleman by the name of Dave Sunderland.
Yes.
Worked at Newport News Shipbuilding.
Mm-hmm.
And I say worked past tense because he was let go last week in a dispute over a baseball cap.
Yeah.
I guess what was on the baseball cap.
Correct.
Correct?
Yeah.
Go to it.
Yeah, Dave says that he was let go from his job at Newport News Shipbuilding because he was wearing a Trump 2020 cap. I called Dave myself, got a little bit of a background from him on this particular issue, which we found about first in something called Daily Press, one of the local news outlets there in the Newport News Shipbuilding area. Mr. Sunderland says, look, I've got many Trump hats. I wear one every day. I've worn one every day for the last 4 years. But recently I was going into work and I was clocking in, and a supervisor that I've never seen before said, you can't wear that cap in here. Well, and as he goes on to tell me in the story that we had at onenewsnow.com, still available on the website, Mr. Sunderland says, according to the rules of the shipyard, I only answer to one person, so that guy's not my boss. I just went about my day, and 15 minutes go by, and another supervisor who is my boss's boss comes by, and she starts yelling at me, and basically he ends up being let go from his job there at Newport News Shipbuilding. So I figured out how to get in contact with the media relations folks there at Newport News Shipbuilding, and they sent me this long response, which says, among other things, the complexity of our work requires an extraordinary level of teamwork to be successful. To that end, we have policies and procedures to eliminate anything that could negatively impact that teamwork. These long-standing policies and procedures are designed to minimize disruptions and enable our work teams to remain focused on doing their job safely, efficiently, and effectively. These policies and procedures are not specific to any particular election or candidate. Here's where it gets really interesting. As Mr. Sunderland told me and the Daily Press there, I've seen Black Lives Matter masks, but nothing has been done about that. And when I started here in May of 2012, there were people wearing Barack Obama T-shirts and other merchandise during his re-election bid. In 2016, similar issue, I saw things saying, I'm with Hillary. Nothing, to his knowledge, was ever said to these individuals. I don't know if they were reprimanded. I don't know if they were let go. I tried to find that out myself from the media relations folks there at Newport News Shipbuilding, but they were, no, we don't want to do an interview. And as a matter of fact, they told me they declined the opportunity to have an interview with American Family News and One News Now, and they sent me that statement. But Mr. Sunderland says, I don't have a problem with somebody wearing a Black Lives Matter T-shirt or mask or cap. I don't have a problem with somebody wearing something for Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, or I guess maybe in this case Biden and Harris. He says that's their First Amendment right. That's everybody's First Amendment right. If you want to wear that, I don't have a problem with it. But apparently Newport News Shipbuilding, despite its statement there saying we're not against any particular election or candidate, does have an issue with somebody wearing a Trump 2020 cap.
All right. Well, we have a similar issue going on at American Airlines, where the airlines, correct me if I'm wrong now, have announced a policy that their workers will be allowed to wear masks with Black Lives Matter on them. Is that correct?
Pins. They're going to be pins.
Okay.
And I mean, what's the difference, right? It's still a Black Lives Matter support slogan, something of that nature. But yeah, this has been covered a lot in recent days by New York Post, Fox News picked up on it, and I assume just about everybody and their brother is starting to do stories on this. I called American Airlines, and they sent me this rather long statement. They say
did the statement for American Airlines, did that person also go to the School of Bureaucratic Language?
They went to the school of long drawn out things I can't put in a story because we're only allowed so many times, only so much time. But yeah, the spokesman or spokesperson for American Airlines said, fundamentally, we believe Black Lives Matter is an expression of equality, not a political statement. It doesn't mean other lives don't matter, rather that in our society, black lives should matter and be valued the same as others. So basically, they're going to allow crew members, flight attendants, people that work on the planes, things like that, they're going to be able to wear Black Lives Matter pins while they try to come up with their own design to make it unique for American Airlines employees. Now, American Airlines did tell me, and I've never seen anybody wearing one of these pins, but American Airlines did tell me that our Christian, veteran, and LGBTQ groups have developed their own pin that can be worn on their uniform as well. If you've ever flown the friendly skies and you've seen somebody wearing a Christian, veteran, or LGBTQ pin on an American Airlines flight, let me know, because I've never seen that before. But that's what American Airlines says. Hey, our people are going to wear pins.
Well, here's the issue, and I'm not sure which case you may have drawn this information, but Black Lives Matter, the argument is not a political organization. And that's, let's be clear, that's what we're talking about. Black Lives Matter, capital B, capital L, capital M, is an organization, and it is political because it does have a political agenda.
Yeah, it may not be a candidate like a Joe Biden or a Kamala Harris, President Trump, Mike Pence, or whoever else out there is running for president or some other powerful position of these United States of America. But it is political in nature when you consider the various things that they're demanding, reparations or, this and that, one thing or the other. A lot of their members have, for instance, I saw someone with Chicago's chapter of Black Lives Matter say, it doesn't bother me if somebody's robbing a Gucci's or a Macy's because that's letting me know that person's going to have something to eat that night. So there are things in there that are political in nature. It just might not be a political candidate like a Joe Biden or a President Trump.
I just think it's a joke, though, for them to say that it's not a political organization, so I can't put it in the same category as a Trump hat or a Biden emblem of some type, whatever the case. Of course it's a political organization.
Yeah, I mean, just, if you were arguing for anything in this world, that's pretty much a political argument. Yes, you might not be saying I'm Republican or I'm Democrat or I'm independent or libertarian or something of that nature, but you're still being political when you are wearing that. You're certainly politicizing that message by wearing a pin or a mask or a T-shirt or cap or whatever it is. So, yes, I mean, you can argue it's semantics, but it's still a political issue at the end of the day, and there is an obvious double standard here, at least when it comes to a Newport News shipbuilding. When Dave Sunderland says, I was told I can't wear my Trump 2020 hat, but I've seen all these other people for years do this. And again, I tried to get the Newport News shipbuilding people to go on record saying as much, but they declined the opportunity to be interviewed by myself. So
Didn't want to be on the record. Speaking of political issues, vaccinations, vaccines for COVID is becoming a political issue because over the weekend, both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both were taking or trying to seed the idea out there that President Trump is going to rush a vaccine onto the market before the election and that he's not listening to science. Well, the companies that are testing these vaccines, and there are a number of them, are all saying, are you crazy? Do you think we're going to be forced to put something out there that we haven't tested thoroughly and believe it is ready for public consumption?
Yeah, this is the same party, by the way, the party of science that once said snow was going to be a thing of the past. And ask the people of Colorado today if they got some snow.
Yes.
So, yeah, there have been a lot of people kind of criticizing the Trump administration saying, look, we just found out about this in March and we really started pouring our efforts on these things, and here we are in September, and all of a sudden we're going to have a vaccine. There has been a lot of work. People are working around the clock, not just in the United States of America, but Israel, Australia, a number of countries are trying to find that vaccine because, let's face it, they probably have a reason why they want to have their version of the vaccine work, right? Their stock can go up. They look good. They feel like they're helping America or the world or things of that nature. But there are people out there that are somewhat reluctant to get the vaccine, at least be among the first people to be in line to get a vaccine. Late last week, USA Today had a poll out that found 2/3 of Americans say they will not get the COVID-19 vaccine when it's first available. There's someone named Ebony Dew, a self-described independent from Capitol Heights, Maryland. Ebony says, quote, "I don't plan on being anyone's guinea pig. I don't plan on getting it at all. I feel like their testing is a trial and error. And I also feel like they don't really know all that much about this virus, so how can they create a cure for it just yet?" Now, USA Today did use this as an opportunity to go on and air all the things USA Today doesn't like about President Trump and how it has been a very short amount of time and how in the world could they find a cure and things of that nature. I think it's safe to say that if it was someone else in office, they would probably think this is awesome because we're the party of science and we know the answers and things of that nature. So while 2/3 of Americans have said they won't get the vaccine, USA Today, which was doing the questions and they didn't share how exactly they asked the questions, did go on to use this as a way to bash President Trump. We'll see in the coming weeks. We did have an Associated Press story on onenewsnow.com last week in which the CDC had apparently advised states to be prepared to distribute a vaccine should there be one available by November 1st. We'll see whether or not states are on board.
And
there's
a plan in place for that to get, what, 300 million vaccination applications,
right,
I guess you would call it, to be ready. But, I mean, even the president himself says it would be nice to have it, obviously, in October or November, but if it's December, so be it.
Yeah.
He is listening to the science.
Right. And, you know, the president has, listen, he's got a lot of people talking to him. He's tried to, I do think he probably wants a vaccine to be available out there as an option. In case you're wondering or you're concerned, I've not seen or heard anything saying that people are going to be required to show up at their county health department to get a vaccine or, you know, anything like that. I'm sure there may be some employers that might want their employees to get it. That may result in lawsuits, but we'll cover that if and when it happens.
Yeah, I think Twyla Brace, who is with Citizens Council for Health Freedom, she's kind of addressed this potential controversy if we start getting into if you want to work here, you're going to have to get this vaccine.
Yeah, that, you know, emphasis on health freedom in her organization's title. She wants people to have the option. And, you know, depending on, I know hospital employees oftentimes are the first ones to be told, if not, required, whatever you want to call it, to get inoculated or, you know, something of that nature. Certainly military service personnel, I could see them probably being told you got to get it. But whether or not we see that spilling out to other parts of the private sector, I'm not sure. But even Twyla has shared some skepticism herself as to whether or not a vaccine would work, based on the fact that it oftentimes takes years to come up with a vaccine for something. And even then, like a flu vaccine, for example, it doesn't always work. Some years we have flu vaccines that do great. Other times they're epic flops. And, you know, you wasted your time and money and energy and effort to even get one. We can expect probably a similar situation with the COVID-19 vaccine, but, you know, I mean, whatever they come out with this year, perhaps, they'll probably build on at some point in the future, assuming, of course, we do actually get a vaccine.
All right, Chris Woodward, I know you'll keep up with all of this.
Yes.
And let us know what is happening in that area. But I do think there's going to be a lot of controversy when we finally do get a vaccine as to whether it should be applied in a mandatory fashion. Whether it's now, I remember as a kid when I went to school, which is many decades ago, but we were required to get boosters for TB, that kind of thing, and we really didn't think too much about it at the time.
Yeah,
and so maybe there won't be that kind of controversy. But I think, you know, folks are skeptical today. I think given what we have seen over the last 10 or 15 years of more government power in our lives, and government telling us what must be done. And so I think, like you've quoted a few people there are folks that are on alert to being told you must have this vaccination. The other thing that's come up too is tracing people, tracking people. You know, Joe's got the vaccine. Martha doesn't. You know, you start treating people like lepers.
Yeah, and there is some precedent for this already. I mean, the government can easily fine you based on whether or not you have your locator on your phone. They can track you. I mean, if you use a credit or a debit card, the government knows where you are and where you've been. So it wouldn't be difficult for some government person to find out where you are, where you've been, who you've been around. to be able to knock on your door and say you need to get shot.
Remember the biker gathering in South Dakota a few weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
There's been some agency, and I was reading this, was a brief story over the weekend, where they have been tracking the cell phones. There were tens of thousands of people showed up at this biker event. Rob, do you remember what that's Sturgis is?
Mm-hmm.
Sturgis,
South Dakota.
Yeah, they've been tracking the cell phones of these people and looking for outbreaks because they came from all over the country, and looking to see if there's some kind of pattern in outbreaks in COVID.
Mm-hmm.
The story went on to say, I think there may have been 5 cases out of what they were expecting 200,000 people at Sturgis. 5 cases so far, but they're going to continue to track this across the country using cell phone numbers.
Yeah. But are they doing it for the people protesting in the streets? Probably not.
Probably not. All right, time to hear from you folks. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. A lot of subjects to talk about tonight. The way our police officers are being treated across the country. We talked about the resignations today. The entire police leadership in Rochester, New York. Also, the Dallas police chief retiring today because they just don't have the support of the people in the wake of the protests. 888-589-8840. And as we've talked about, workplace apparel being politicized these days. Is that happening at your workplace? Are you concerned about that? 888-589-8840 is the number to call, and we'll hear from you when we come back here on the Tuesday edition of the Hamilton Corner. Back in a moment.
How to acquire a vessel in holiness and honor, referring to a spouse, referring to a wife, referring to a husband. What the world thinks is, what you need to do is you need to get out there, have a lot of sex until you find the one with whom you seem to be sexually compatible, and then that's the one to marry. God says that is not the way you go about it. We're supposed to be looking for a life partner.
Focal Point with Brian Fisher, weekdays at 1 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Regardless of how you leave this world, be ready by having repented and turned to Jesus.
Amen. And just remember, Jesus says it rains on the just and the unjust. Rain is good, but it also can be destructive. We live in a fallen world, and therefore some bad things are going to happen to bad people and to good people.
Exploring the Word, weekday afternoons at 3 Central on American Family Radio.
Understanding what is taking place in America. This is David Wheaton, host of The Christian Worldview. Are you trying to make sense of the protesting and riots in our streets, tearing down statues, burning and looting of businesses, calls to defund the police and disrupt the nuclear family, screaming obscenities into people's faces, and the relentless hatred of President Trump? It all makes sense when you realize that a Marxist coup is being attempted in America, straight from Saul Alinsky's playbook, Rules for Radicals. While they say they want social justice, what these Marxists really want is power, so they can impose their godless dystopia on everyone. Psalm 2 says, "He who sits in the heavens laughs, the Lord scoffs at them." Hear more at thechristianworldview.org, and then tune in this weekend for another topic that will sharpen your worldview.
Listen to The Christian Worldview with David Wheaton, Saturday mornings at 8 Central on American Family Radio.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes with news and commentary next.
These challenging times have shown a college degree is more important than ever. But if the loss of Virginia's tuition assistance grant for certain new online students is holding you back, Liberty University is here to help. We're stepping in to replace your lost VTAG funds with our LU Tag Award and combining it with a $3,600 undergraduate transfer student scholarship or our already low first responder and military discounts to save you up to 60% on your degree. We've got this, Virginia. Learn more by texting LU Tag to 49595. That's LU Tag to 49595.
U.S. Navy sailors will once again be able to attend church. The acting Undersecretary of the Navy issued a memorandum allowing sailors to attend services in person. Last week, First Liberty Institute and a group of chaplains raised concerns about restrictions that had been placed on military personnel because of the China virus. Services had been banned, but house parties and protests were allowed.
Mike Barry, an attorney with First Liberty Institute, said the military's decision to back away from the ban is a major victory for the Constitution and religious liberty. During the Obama administration, the Pentagon became a hotspot for religious discrimination. The Military Religious Freedom Foundation once bragged it had a hotline to the Pentagon. Fortunately, the Trump administration is restoring the military to its faith-friendly environment, and one of the first things they did was disconnect that hotline. I'm Todd Starnes.
The Hamilton Quarter podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Quarter on American Family Radio.
And indeed, we are back to the Hamilton Corner. Going to go to our phones in just a second. 888-589-8840. Well, you know, the controversy late last week, there was this article in the Atlantic magazine saying that President Trump in 2018 disparaged our military people who had lost their lives in war, calling them losers. The Atlantic magazine article, they had 4 anonymous sources. Well, now there are about 20 sources, named sources, including John Bolton, no friend of the president, who said the president never said any such thing like that. Nothing at all. Well, our good friend Gary Bauer has been writing a little bit about this, and he likes to point out, so who is the real friend of our military? And he goes into great detail, even before Donald Trump became president, how he supported our military with his money, making in some cases $1 million donations to veterans. But he wants to remind us, Gary Bauer does, of where the Democrats have stood with our military over the years. He says before there was Antifa, radicals were rioting in the streets in the 1960s, harassing U.S. soldiers coming back from Vietnam, protesting the military, law enforcement, and the U.S. government. The radicals marched by the hundreds of thousands behind the flag of North Vietnam. And he says one future Democrat senator came back from Vietnam and accused his fellow soldiers of committing war crimes. Liberals finally found a veteran they loved. They brought him to Capitol Hill for a hearing, and before a national audience, Senator John Kerry indicted his fellow soldiers. A lot of folks have forgotten about that. Years later, Senator Kennedy accused U.S. troops of terrorizing women and children in Iraq, and Secretary of State Kerry negotiated the terrible Obama-Biden nuclear deal with Iran. Barack Obama and Joe Biden insulted virtually every soldier who served in Iraq and Afghanistan when they traded 5 terrorist leaders at Guantanamo Bay for Bo Bergdahl, a deserter who abandoned his unit. Bauer goes on to say Illinois Senator Dick Durbin compared U.S. guards at Guantanamo Bay to Nazis. And who can forget Congresswoman Ilhan Omar smeared U.S. troops, accusing them of war crimes in Somalia. Her daughter accused U.S. troops of killing innocent children. And Bauer says the idea that Joe Biden and the left-wing media are accusing Trump or any conservative of not supporting the military is absolutely laughable. Yeah, we should be reminded of those things, folks, when you hear those ridiculous accusations being made against President Trump right now when it comes to his support of the military. All right, let's go to our phones, and let's first go to Ohio this evening. And Vicki is on the line. Vicki, go ahead, please.
Hi there. Good evening. I just wanted to comment regarding Black Lives Matter not being a political organization. I think that is also laughable because of the millions of dollars that they are funneling into all of these Democratic people running. Mm-hmm. It is just unbelievable and unreal. That, I mean, okay, maybe they're not a political organization, but they're clearly lobbyists.
Yes, and they do have a political agenda. Need we remind folks once again that the leadership of the Black Lives Matter organization we're talking about here are Marxists. They have a political agenda, among other things, as our brother Abe has reminded you folks, you listeners, that one of the things they want to do is destroy the nuclear family, the biblical family. So they do have a political agenda. And for the NFL or the NBA or others or workplace or leadership to say, well, we're allowed to wear BLM. It's not political on our football helmets or on our caps or insignias that we wear in the workplace because BLM is not a political group. That is absolute nonsense. And Vicki, thank you for reminding us of that. All right, to Alabama, and we say good evening to Larry. Larry, go ahead, please.
Oh, yes. I just wanted to mention about American Airlines that they don't show Fox News on their live TV lineup.
Oh, really? I wonder why.
Yeah, I know Delta and United and Southwest do, but it's just curious why American does not.
Well, Larry, you're not suggesting for a moment there might be a political agenda at American Airlines. Would you be doing that?
No, it's just...
Listen, for corporate America, thanks, Larry, I appreciate that. For corporate America to say that they don't have political agendas, you just need to go to recent news. When you have big companies boycotting various states that took a stand, remember some of these states, like North Carolina, like some other states, that, when corporate America said, well, unless you let men who think they're women go into little girls' bathrooms, we're not going to come to your town. So corporate America has a political agenda, folks, and you need to be very aware of that. All right, Arkansas, and I believe is it Kenya?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Kenya.
Let me start out by saying this. In the beginning, God created the heavens, the earth, and everything in between, and he called it good. Yeah. With that being said, he created us all in the likeness and the image of himself, and he wanted us to all be good. What we have got to do is stop thinking about all of our individual selves and think about Americans as one group of people that has to stand together, work together, and live together. We need to consider how everyone else feels, but at the same time, we have to live together. And be lawful, okay? We don't need to defund the police. There are evil people in the world, just like there are good people in the world. Not everyone makes good conscious decisions. We don't need to be out in the middle of the street saying Black Lives Matter, because guess what? I'm a so-called black woman, and Black lives do not matter. It was not written in the Constitution, so they need to get over it and figure out what it is they want and go for that. Get out of the streets, because it's a pandemic going on, and you're not helping the situation. If you complain about, people losing their jobs, they're losing their homes, whole families elderly because you're shutting down everything because you're worried about a pandemic, but yet and still the streets are filled with people. What we need to do is go back inside of our home and pray. Turn to Jesus. This world is supposed to be, turn to Yahweh. This world was built on a foundation that we all forgetting about. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm not a Trump supporter, but Trump is the president right now. Period, point blank. And he is an American. Period. And here come a game with the Democrats and the Republicans getting ready to come up to play more games on the American people. And so what I say to you is wake up, rise up, take your power back. Together we stand, divided we fall. And we should vote for Demetri Jefferson Washington for president, a regular common person like us, ourselves, that knows what we need and can help us, and that is not a part of the political game. And that's what I have to say. Today is the day the Lord has made. Wake up, rise up, and quit being idiots.
She used to have her own program. That was very, very good there, Kenya. I would just add one thing to your remarks. We must rally around truth. We must rally around truth. First of all, biblical truth. And our caller did a pretty good job of the biblical standard that we have to have. But, I say the Bible because it is the source of truth. It is the source of truth. And what we have going on today is just a firestorm of lies and half-truths. That's what's happening out there. And unfortunately for a lot of these young people, and for the most part, what you see, the folks that you see protesting in the streets at night, they're young people. But they have been indoctrinated with lies from their school days to their university days. There's a young lady who has been arrested. I think this was in New York. Her dad is a psychiatrist. I think her mom is, they're highly paid people. They live in a $2 million house in New York. But she's been arrested now because she was out there and took part in a violent demonstration. And by the way, she supported Beto O'Rourke. She was in university in Houston. So that'll tell you where her politics are, which goes to the politics of the riots as well. But I appreciate our caller there. We have to step back from this, but we have to step back and first immerse ourselves in what truth is, and the best source of truth is God's Word. Amen? All right, to Mississippi. And Debbie, welcome to the program.
Hey, I just was questioning about the National Guard on when they can be brought in, like with these riots. Someone was telling me that the governor had to request it first.
Well, the president has been after some of these governors, and we're talking about Washington State and Oregon, to bring in the National Guard to stop these riots, because these rioters, they're too much for the local police departments. And as we talked about off the top of the show tonight, when the police departments do step in and fight back against these rioters, often they're condemned by the local politicians. And that's why President Trump, but you're right, basically, that the governors have to be the ones that call in the National Guard. Now, we did have the incident in Portland, I think it was, where you had a federal courthouse that was under attack, and the president had every right to send in extra forces to protect that piece of federal property. But primarily, it is supposed to be the governor of a state who calls in the National Guard. And why, in heaven's name, you have leadership, the governor of Washington State, the governor of Oregon, being reluctant to do that, I just don't understand it. But you know, as our boss Tim Wildman has said, people of these states elect these leaders. And only the people of those states, they have the right to elect them out. It's going to be really interesting to see when we have state elections in these states what's going to happen. I think we have time for one more call. Timothy in Tennessee. Go ahead.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good.
I wanted to say this. I am a black man.
Okay.
But I have been in neighborhoods, and you hear these mass shootings and these massacres of these young black men killing each other. You don't see BLM anywhere with that.
You're right.
You don't see protests in the street on that, and that's what hurts me. Because if we want real justice, we want real change, it starts with us first. Now I'm speaking on the black community, and I love everyone, and I love Jesus Christ.
Amen. And
I know that when we get to heaven, that he's not going to be standing up there saying you can come in because you black, or you can't come in because you white, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on my knees diligently every day praying for the people, for the community, and for our nation. Because regardless of what, this is the greatest nation we could be in, for black or white, because it's people that's risking their lives every day just to get a glimpse of what we have.
Timothy, can I ask you a question? Why do you think it is that you don't have the Black Lives Matter organization? For instance, a little 8-year-old girl who was murdered in Chicago this weekend, I don't see anything from them.
Yes, sir. And it hurts me. I don't understand that. If you was really concerned, you would be concerned by being in the midst of all of it, not just that.
Yeah.
Because that's where it starts at. That's where it starts at. Now, I understand that, yes, it is some prejudice out there, but we all have the opportunity to work hard. We all have the opportunity to get over the hump like everyone else. And I'm so sick and tired of some of the black community using as the white man as an excuse the reason why that we can't succeed in life. And that's not the way that God meant it to be.
No. Timothy, thank you so much. You are a wise man, and we appreciate your call. I'm glad you made it through and were able to talk to us this evening. Timothy, thank you so much. And Timothy is exactly right, folks. You know, when we stand before the Lord someday, Not going to make decisions based on skin color, folks. Because what? God looks at the heart of individuals. He doesn't look at skin color. He looks at the heart and will hold us accountable. Hold us accountable for what we have in our hearts. What we have done about truth. Let's get back to that theme. What we have done about truth and been exposed to. And yes, each of us will be held accountable. Hey, it's been great to be with you today. I think we could go for another hour tonight. We had great calls there. We appreciate it. As we started off the program, be praying for our men and women in uniform, folks. Remember them. They are under fire in every corner today. But also be praying that the truth gets through to our young people about what's going on out there. Great to be with you. Fred sitting in for Abe. Abe, Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow evening. Stay tuned for more great programming here on American Family Radio. Bye for now.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The AFA Journal helps you discover how Christians are pressing toward the mark as salt and light here and abroad. You'll find articles by award-winning writers